Hey everybody, today I want to talk about an album that I just listed to my website, needlemeetsvinyl.com, and it's an album by the Eagles called On the Border. Now this is the Eagles' third album, and in my opinion, this is one of the Eagles' most overlooked albums. This album, by the way, let me just state that I am in no way like a major Eagles fan at all. I can kind of take them or leave them. I definitely can appreciate some of their songwriting. I can definitely appreciate their recordings. They made really commercial and just crystal clear recordings in the 1970s. And this album actually has a bunch of Eagles songs that I actually like quite a bit. And this album also has a bit of an interesting kind of back history. Now, first, let me tell you that this is a UK pressing of this album, an early UK pressing from 1974. And I had always read, and I'm sure a lot of you probably know about this as well, and may have even more information about this than I do, but I've always read that the Eagles' first three albums, the best pressings of those were always the UK pressings. And then I finally was able to pick up one of these, UK pressing of On the Border, and I'd had a bunch of US pressings of this album as well, because you can pick up the US pressings pretty easily. They're easy to find in record shops. You can find early pressings of the US pressings of On the Border. So I picked up a bunch of those. I even had a German pressing as well, because there happened to be a German pressing in one of my record shops. But when I finally got my hands on this UK pressing, I was blown away. The UK pressing is a whole nother beast compared to the US pressings, and the German pressing for that matter. And it's just a matter of impact. Now, the UK pressing just has so much more punch, and it just really kicks. As soon as you put it on the record player, it's like night and day. This is an excellent sounding record. Now, let me show you what this looks like. It's on the Asylum label, and like I said, it's a UK pressing. So it's on the Asylum white label, and this is in near mint condition. It sounds absolutely great. There's side 2. Now this album has, like I said, for an Eagles album, for my personal taste, it has a lot of Eagles songs I actually like on here. I think that's probably because this album tends to be a little bit more of a heavy rock, not heavy rock, but for the Eagles, it's more of a heavy rock album. And so it's got a song on here called Already Gone, which I like a whole lot. I think that's a really good song. Also has a song on here that I wasn't really aware of until I actually started listening to this album, and it's a song called My Man, and I think that's a really cool song. I also like You Never Cry Like a Lover. That's a cool song. James Dean is on side 2. That was kind of a hit. I remember hearing that song a lot on the radio, on like classic rock radio when I was growing up. By the way, I should state that my parents, my mom and dad, are big Eagles fans. So I grew up hearing the Eagles played a lot. Although they were one of the bands that when my parents would play them, I didn't pay that much attention to. Like my parents would play the Beatles, obviously, and Fleetwood Mac, and The Who, and the Beach Boys, and stuff like that. And I would just love that stuff and just devour it. When they played the Eagles, they would play like the Eagles and like Dan Fogelberg and the band America, and that kind of like 70s California rock, whatever stuff. I would get a little bit bored and I wouldn't pay that much attention to. Granted, now that I've gotten older, I can appreciate that stuff a little bit more, especially like stuff like this, like the Eagles on the Border album. I can definitely appreciate it a lot more just looking at it from a sound perspective, the whole recording process and all that kind of stuff. I can appreciate what they were able to do with this record. By the way, another song that's also I liked on here is Good Day in Hell. It's kind of a cool rock song. And then the last song on the album is called The Best of My Love, which of course is probably the best known song on this record. So, little back history with this album. So, the band originally started recording this album in London at Olympic Studios with Glenn Johns. Glenn Johns, of course, for those of you who are Beatle fans out there, which a lot of people on my channel are Beatle fans, including myself, you know that Glenn Johns worked with the Beatles on their Get Back / Let It Be project. And of course, it didn't really end up all that well with him and the Beatles. They ended up bringing in Phil Spector, so he kind of got edged out of that. Well, with this album, something kind of similar happened. So they started working with Glenn Johns at Olympic Studios, And Glenn Johns had produced their first 2 albums as well, which they also recorded in London. And they had a definite laid-back kind of country feel to them. And Glenn Johns apparently just kind of demanded full control over the sessions. And he had a bunch of rules, and one of the rules was that the band Eagles were not allowed to use any drugs during the sessions at all. And I'm sure in the early 70s, when drug culture, especially in recording studios, was just absolutely the norm, that's kind of at that time, kind of a crazy, kind of weird request. So that didn't sit well with the band, but they went along with it for the first two albums. And also, apparently, Glenn Johns was pretty insistent on making it sound how he thought it should sound, which he would add like a lot of reverb and kind of make like a bit of a lush, kind of laid-back sound. And apparently, when it came time to record this album, their third album, the members of the Eagles, including Glenn Frey and Don Henley, didn't really want to do that anymore. They didn't really want to have that laid-back country sound. They wanted to go for a harder rock sound. And of course, this didn't sit well with Glenn Johns because Glenn Johns had an idea of what he wanted. So they clashed a lot. And as it turned out, they recorded a bunch of songs, but only 2 of them ended up on the finished album that were produced by Glenn Johns, because in the middle of the sessions in London, the Eagles decided that they were just unhappy with what was going on, and then Glenn Johns was unhappy, and Glenn Johns ended up quitting the project and just leaving the project, which sounds a little bit familiar as far as Glenn Johns and a band not getting along, and it just kind of dissolves into something else. And the Eagles ended up leaving London, going to California, and finishing the album with a new producer, and recording it with way more of a like kind of a rock edge. So you get kind of songs like "Already Gone" and "On the Border" and "Good Day in Hell" and "James Dean," which are, for the Eagles at least at this point, were a little bit more of a heavy rock sound, less of that kind of country roots kind of stuff. So Glenn Johns was kind of pushed to the side, but 2 of his songs did end up on the album, and they are "You Never Cry Like a Lover" and "The Best of My Love." And those are both, by the way, they both sound really good. Glenn Johns is known for his great sound. By the way, another thing I should mention is that Glenn Johns has a pretty amazing quote that I read online, that apparently when the Eagles were telling him how they wanted to be more of a rock and roll band and record with a harder edge, he said to them, "You're not a rock and roll band. The Who are a rock and roll band. You guys are a country band." That's pretty bold thing to say to the Eagles, I think, and pretty funny. Anyway, so that's a little bit of the backstory of this album. So it was kind of, the sessions were a little bit temperamental at the time, but all of it ended up okay. And obviously they put out this album, which at the time was their most successful album compared to their first 2. Another thing interesting about this album is that it's the first appearance of Don Felder, who would go on to be an official member of the Eagles, and of course would end up co-writing like a bunch of their classic songs, including Hotel California, and recording a lot of just very memorable guitar parts. He was a very important part to the Eagles story, and he appears on this album for the first time on the songs "Already Gone" and "Good Day in Hell." So a little interesting side note. So this Eagles album, it just sounds really good. If you like the Eagles, this is a very special pressing, and you probably already know about that if you like the Eagles. You probably are aware that the UK pressings are just excellent for these first 3 albums, and I'm very happy to have found this one and to listen to it and to put it on the website needlemeetsvinyl.com. So if you're interested in picking up this album, go to the website, check it out. As always, I've written a whole write-up about this, about the recording process, about the whole riff between the band and Glenn Johns. And so go on there, check it out. By the way, there are 2 other Eagles albums currently available on the website. The one I just mentioned, Desperado, is on the website. Also, Hotel California. So if you want to have just a Eagles weekend or something, you can pick up all 3 of the Eagles records I have on the website. By the way, I would love to know in the comments below if there are any other Eagles albums that those of you out there would like me to try to track down and find the best pressings for, or if you have some ideas as to what the good pressings are for certain Eagles albums. Because like I've said, I am not in any way an Eagles fanatic. I appreciate them and happy to give them a listen. So anyway, go to the website, check out this album, On the Border, and that's it for now. So we'll talk to you later. Bye for now.